Thank you very much. Great to be here. Wonderful to be with entrepreneurs, because that's what you are. We're going to spend a little time today going on a journey, okay? I want to talk about the last couple of years in America and what went right and what went wrong and what we can all learn from. Because the economy, thankfully, is on fire. It's an unbelievable outcome that's occurred here after 2 long years of pandemic. Now, going into the pandemic, I had 50 companies that I'd invested in. And what I want to talk about today is the ones that survived and thrived versus the ones that didn't. What did they do right versus the ones that didn't get it right? What's the difference? And what can we learn from this? Because there's been so much change in the economy over the last 24 months. We've never gone through anything like this, so we're going to go through this journey. I'm going to show you a couple of companies that I'm involved in that really, really looked like it was over for them, and then they pivoted. I call it the great digital pivot. This incredible journey that they put together to figure out a way to survive and then thrive and then grow and be wildly successful, all in 24 months. That's incredible. So let's have a look at this. I'm going to whip through a few slides here. Let's talk about every business to start with. Not some businesses, every business. Everybody was forced to work remotely. Nobody had ever done that before. No business would shut down their headquarters and send everybody home for 2 years. Who would ever think of doing that? And yet, that's exactly what happened. Now, it changed the way people worked because it's no longer a 9-to-5 gig. Many of you are working at home right now. It's become task-oriented. And the great teams that work well together now set tasks, whether you're a salesperson or whether you're in logistics or accounting, you set a task and you get it done. It doesn't matter when you get it done. It doesn't matter if you're working at 2 in the morning or at 9 in the morning. Nobody cares anymore. It's can you get it done? And if you're selling, can you hit your numbers? I'm a salesman. I work with salesmen. All my companies that I work with sales first. We don't work 9 to 5 in my world. We just work. That's how it happens. And I think some of you guys get that. Now, the only way we could have pulled this off is with technology. If this had happened to us as a country 12 years ago, we would have been screwed. We didn't have the tools we needed to work this way. The incredible use of the internet, Zoom technology, telephones, communications, texting, it made it virtually easy to do this. Remember, no one knew what Zoom was. Now it's like Kleenex. People use it every single day all around the world. And it tied us together in a way we could have never done before. And these technologies got better and better and better. Latency is what you call something that's slow on the internet, when you're delayed by half a second. Zoom got rid of latency. They figured out a way to make the packet smaller and smaller and more effective so that people weren't delayed anymore. They were seemingly in the room right beside you, and other technologies like that. So that really mattered. Now, this is the one that I want you to think about. Think about this. Before the pandemic, if you're talking about consumer goods and services, for example, this is how the distribution of sales worked. 50% of sales in America prior to the pandemic were through retail distribution. The Walmarts, the Targets, the Bed Bath & Beyond, and all the stores across America. That's 50% of all things sold, including groceries and clothing and everything. And for most companies, when you sell through retail distribution, you make 50% gross margin, so 50 cents on the dollar. That's been the way for 100 years. Now, over the last 17 years, there's another retailer that came along that now has 40%. It's called Amazon. Every one of my companies sells through Amazon. Every single one, and that's 40% of sales. And the margins there are slightly better. There's 60 cents on the dollar that you make if it's your product or service. However, Amazon does not give you your customer's name. So you get that extra 10%, but you don't know who you're selling to. In fact, they sometimes put your competitor right in the same box that they're shipping your product to your customer. And it's their Amazon logo on the box. I'm cool with it. But the last 10%, that's you selling direct to your customer. And why do you care about that? The margins when you do that, you only have two costs. The shipping cost and the cost of manufacturing the product. So your margins can be like 85% if you're selling direct to your customer. Most people couldn't do it pre-pandemic because there was another cost that they couldn't get under control, customer acquisition cost. Now, when you're selling direct to a customer, you have to acquire the customer, so they're spending so much money acquiring the customer that they were losing money on every sale. Now, here's what happened. This is really interesting. When retail shut down, and you already had a base of customers out there, let's say you're selling, in one case, one of my companies sells insecticide, and they were selling it through retail. And it's kind of insecticide that doesn't kill your pets, made out of vitamin C and lime, okay? Now, when retail shut down, people couldn't get the insecticide anymore. So they basically started putting up a website. They use Shopify, and they work with Facebook, and they advertised to all their customers and said, look, we're not out of business. We'll ship you the insecticide if you want. And usually those kind of digital campaigns would yield 1%, 2%, 3%, and you basically would break even on it. But that's not what happened. When people were locked in their homes, they started saying, hey, I want products and services, I want cupcakes, I want gym equipment, I want insecticide, I want clothing, I want groceries. And those percentages went from 2% up to 20, 30, 40, 50% sometimes. Half the people they solicited, their existing customers, started buying direct at 80% gross margins. Think about that. And all of a sudden, from almost being bankrupt, companies come ripping back, making really great cash flow, because when you buy direct, you're paying on your credit card that day. You don't have to wait 90 days to get paid. This started happening within 90 days of the pandemic. It was a remarkable outcome. But there's more. When you sell direct, you get the customer data. Their birth date, their address, their cell number, their color preferences, their style preferences, their size, all that data, all of that information, and it's yours, it's your customer. So all of a sudden you start to see when people buy your product or service, what price they pay for it, what their preferences are in style. That's incredible information, because when you know what they want, you can offer them more of it. Now, prior to the pandemic, that kind of technology was very expensive, but during the pandemic, many companies emerged that started providing those kind of services in the cloud for small business. So now, if you're only doing $500,000 in sales, you can have the same service that Nike uses to track their customer preferences in size, color, and style. That's powerful. And that's why the economy started to really take off. This is an amazing change over the last 2 years, because so many companies now are selling direct to their customers. And that's what you do. That's what you do. That's exactly what you do. The more you know about your potential customer, that lead becomes more and more valuable. This is all about direct customer relationships. That's what matters here. Now, this changed real estate in a big way. Homes that had offices in them became very, very valuable, and office towers were empty. There's towers in Boston. My lawyers that I use for my corporate business gave away a whole floor. A third of their partners never come into the office anymore. They don't want to. The new CFO I just hired, she had 5 job offers. And I said, well, look, you only have to come in 3 days a week to headquarters. And she said, I'd love to take this job for you, Mr. Wonderful. However, if you make me come to the office, I'm working for somebody else. Wow. I said, why is that? She said, I don't have to go into an office to get my job done. You tell me what you need, and I'll get it done. You want me or not? I gave her the job. I mean, the world's changing. There's no question about it. Now, I want to talk to you about what happened to my portfolio of companies in terms of numbers. Going into the pandemic, that portfolio, remember, these are private companies, and the way you measure private companies doesn't have a share price, it's free cash flow. How much cash is it making? And most companies in America prior to the pandemic were making 15% free cash flow before tax. That was a fantastic number for our portfolio. And we manage it on a weekly basis. We want two numbers. We want sales and we want free cash flow. That's all we need to know. We can see everything from those two numbers every week. Here we are 2 years later. The portfolio's back, it's roaring. We're going to make 17.5% pre-tax. Why? Some of our costs have virtually gone away. Business travel, cut in half. Our margins have gone way higher because instead of being 10% direct to consumer, like pre-pandemic, remember it was 50% Walmart, 50% Amazon, and 40% Amazon, and 10% our own sites. Some of our companies are now 50% direct to consumer. 50% direct to consumer. They don't need retail. They don't want that statement retail anymore. They want direct to consumer where they make all the money themselves. Nike, that incredible global company, did in 6 months what they said would take 6 years. They got to 50% direct to consumer all around the world. If you're in Cambodia, you're in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, they'll ship the sneakers right to your place. If you're in Chicago, same thing. And they're getting all that customer data. So this is a remarkable change. So the S&P 500, people are asking, why is this market so buoyant, even with all the corrections we've had? Because the companies have record earnings. Record earnings. Every company in the S&P figured this out too. They're all enhancing their margins digitally, direct to consumer. It's the great American pivot, the great digital America 2.0. That's what happened. And it affected every business in this country, including yours, in a positive way. Direct to consumer is extremely powerful. Now, the one challenge we still have, supply chain. We got lots of problems on the supply chain. Hopefully we're going to fix it over the next 2 years. That's the reason inflation is here. I'll give you an example. I have a gym equipment company in Fargo. We used to buy our nuts and bolts and our barbells and everything else from Asia. It was 33% cheaper. Now we buy it here. It's 33% more expensive. We passed that pricing back to our consumers here, and our prices are up 17%. That's inflation. That's what happened. When we get this thing worked out, and the port of Los Angeles is working again, and there's truck drivers back, because right now we're down 20% in our truck drivers, so we have no way to move the stuff around the country. These are issues that are still lingering. But even with these issues, we're having record growth in revenue. So, most businesses are figuring it out. Let's take a case study, okay? I want to use a Shark Tank company, because most of you guys watch Shark Tank or know it, okay? This is a company that should have gone out of business. It should be a zero. It should be dead. But it's not. How did she do it? You'll understand the challenge in a minute when I show you this, okay? This is a company called Blue Land. Now, Sarah is the CEO. I'm going to show you a couple of minutes of the video of her coming into the Shark Tank and what happened, okay? This is the deal, and then you'll start to understand the challenge she had when COVID hit. Because this is a product category that was only sold in retail. Zero direct to consumer in the entire industry prior to the pandemic. Not a single dollar direct to consumer. So, let's watch this video of Blue Land in the Shark Tank.